It may be hard to believe, but Art Eggleton first tasted political victory almost 50 years ago, winning a seat on the City Council of Ontario's capital city. A decade later, he became the mayor, then an MP, then a cabinet minister, then a senator. But all good things must come to an end, and a couple of months ago, he turned 75, the mandatory retirement age for senators. To look back at a half-century in public life and figure out what comes next, we welcome Art Eggleton back to TVO. So nice to see you again.
Good to be here, Steve.
I actually want to take you back to that first election, 1969. You're a kid of 26 at the time, right?
Right.
26, you run for alderman, you win. What do you remember about that first campaign?
It was a tight one. I just barely made it. In fact, I beat out a person who subsequently became a very close friend of mine. That was Johnny Lombardi. He ended up running in that particular election. Now, that election saw a big shift in the ridings or the wards in Toronto. And so there was a vacancy in Ward 4, and I ran there and got elected, but just barely.
Why does a kid of 26 want to run for politics?
Well, I always had an interest in public service, particularly public policy. I wanted to be a participant rather than a spectator. I don't know where I got that from. It didn't come from my parents. They were not particularly active in politics, and there's nothing in my history that I can see with that either. But I always wanted to be involved. I was very interested. I watched news. I read the newspapers, and so there it is. I got involved early.
Well, you won, and you won again, and you won again, and then you decided you wanted to try to become a member of Parliament. This was in 1978. We've got a picture of you here, and of course, the current Prime Minister's father, that's Pierre Trudeau. You lost that by-election.
It's the only election I ever lost. Out of 13, that was the one I lost. But it was a great campaign, having the Prime Minister come in and campaign with me. As you see in the photograph on the streets, he also came to Parkdale Collegiate, and he was very supportive, as were many other people. But it was one election that was lost. Now, at the time, there was a big Polish ethnic constituency in Parkdale.
It's the west end of Toronto.
And the very same day as that by-election was the day that white smoke went up from the Vatican and the Pope, Polish Pope, was elected. And I think they all headed off to celebrate it. I think we couldn't get them all out to vote. So anyway, we lost that election.
John Paul won his election and you lost yours.
Yes.
And they may have been connected.
But you know, I thought that was going to be the end of my municipal career, because this was after almost 11 years as an alderman, as we were then called, not city councillors, but aldermen. Mm-hmm. But then I ended up coming back to become mayor.
Well, there we go. 2 years later, in fact, you run against the incumbent, John Sewell, for mayor, and you beat him. Here's a picture of Art Eggleton with very different hair back then. This was your curly hair phase.
That was the fashion at the time. And it was easy. You didn't have to worry about it too much.
What do you think the key was to winning that race over John Sewell?
Well, I think John had taken some positions on things that perhaps irritated people. I didn't have that big a disagreement with much of his policy, but I think he had worn his welcome with a lot of the voters, and as a consequence, I ended up winning the race.
He was how do we put this? I mean, he was a polarizing figure. He didn't like to wear a suit and tie as you did. Let's show the shot of you moving into the mayor's office here. There you go, again with the curly hair, getting everything just tickety-boo.
I think I lost that curly hair about 2 years later.
Yes, I think so. What do you think were the most impactful changes that happened in Toronto while you were the mayor?
Well, the biggest was the Central Area Plan. This had been devised in David Crombie's time as mayor, and I was a part of that.
That's early 70s.
It was also an era where we set up a city home to provide for more affordable housing in Toronto, and I took that over from David when I became mayor. And implementing the plan was the big part of my job, making sure that we had a wide range of cultural, recreational, housing, business activities in the downtown area to keep it alive by day and by night, the kind of concept that Jane Jacobs told us a lot about at the time. So I saw myself as implementing that plan and putting Toronto towards a new era.
People won't remember this because this is, after all, 35 years ago, but the railway lands, as they were then called, in downtown Toronto, were 200 acres, basically where the Skydome is, or the Rogers Centre. That was all there was nothing there. Nothing there at all.
That's
and
right.
I guess you saw your job as to open that up.
Yes, absolutely, because in the new official plan, we had developed a plan for the railways as well as other parts of the city, and so it was time to open that up, and look at it now.
Indeed. By the time you left office, and let's show the picture here of you packing up, there you are packing up your stuff, you were and are the longest-serving mayor in Toronto's 184-year history. Is that a big deal to you?
Well, of course, it's a nice distinction, but I'd be happy if somebody else took it over. I won 4 elections, but you know, back in the 20s, a guy by the name of Tommy Church, he only went 7 years, but that took 7 elections.
So the terms were a year long then.
The terms were only a year long, and voting was on New Year's Day, believe it or not. But I won 4 elections as mayor in 11 years, and I'm proud of that record.
Now, the term at the beginning, I think, was a 2-year term, wasn't it? And then it went to 3?
My first term was 2 years, and then the rest were 3. Of course, nowadays they're 4.
What's the best way to go?
Well, I think 3 was a good number. You know, they decided to standardize it throughout the province of Ontario. So it's 4 years for every municipality, big and small. That's not appropriate for some of the smaller municipalities, and perhaps for Toronto, well, that's appropriate, but I think 3 would have been a good way to saw it off.
Not including yourself. Take yourself out of the mix. Who's the best mayor Toronto ever had?
Oh, well, that's a very difficult one. I worked with David Crombie, so I have a great admiration for David Crombie. But before that, there were some great mayors. Nathan Phillips, of course, who produced a new city hall for us, and I think he was a very well-loved mayor. So there were some good mayors in there, but I worked closely with David Crombie.
You moved up to federal politics eventually. You became a member of parliament and then got appointed to several portfolios, and I'm going to read them off here. It's going to take a little while, actually. This is in Jean Chrétien's Liberal governments. You were the president of the Treasury Board, Minister for Infrastructure, Minister for International Trade, Minister of National Defense. And let's bring up that shot of you as the Minister of National Defense. This is 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Of all those cabinet postings, which one did you like the best?
Oh, I like them all. My whole career has been a fabulous journey, and I've liked every job that I've done. I mean, there are ups and downs in all of the positions, but I enjoy doing all of them, and I think I had an impact in all of them.
Now that's, let me follow up on that, because one of the things I hear frequently from people who don't like politics is that they think people who spend a lot of time in politics, and you're one of the people who did, are kind of along for the ride and don't really accomplish anything at the end of the day other than to get their pension and go home. How would you counter that argument?
Oh, I don't think most are like that. There's always a few. Just like the general population, you'll find the good, the bad, the ugly. You'll find all sorts of people. But I've always worked extensively at the jobs I'm in to try to make an impact, and I can certainly cite for you things I've done in all of those portfolios.
Okay, pick one.
Oh,
what's something you liked?
Well, you know, in defense, I thought one of the things that was particularly important was to support our troops. Was to make sure that they got paid well, that their families got looked after, that we had an ombudsman and other kinds of ways of appealing decisions from the hierarchy in the military. So looking after the men and women who make up the Canadian Forces was my first priority throughout that time, and I'm quite pleased with the changes that we were able to make. When I was minister responsible for international trade, I helped to bring about some trade agreements with, for example, with Chile and with Israel. Chile, I helped to bring Chilean wines, which have been enjoyed by many people in Canada. But I could go down through the other ones as well. Infrastructure was the first time that we had an infrastructure program, and it was one that I partly designed when I was mayor of Toronto along with some other mayors. And then we implemented it when I became the minister responsible for infrastructure at the same time as I was doing the Treasury Board, of course.
Got it. Now, you did mention in a previous answer that you've experienced your share of ups and downs in politics. And I will take no joy in reminding you that, of course, you resigned from cabinet at one point. I think it was May 2002. The ethics councillor of the day slapped you on the wrists for a contract that you gave out while you were a minister. As you think back on that right now, this is again on Jean Chrétien's watch, what comes to mind when you think back on that time?
Well, it was an error in judgment on my part. Although the person I gave the contract to, first of all, it was a contract of my political staff, not on the departmental staff. And it was all done within the rules. So the ethics counselor didn't say that I broke the rules, but he did say, well, the optics weren't good. Perhaps it could have been done differently. And I think that's probably true. So it was an error in judgment on my part.
Did the Prime Minister of the day urge you to resign or force your hand a bit?
Well, I think he was under a lot of pressure at the time. Paul Martin left the cabinet a week later, and there was a lot of pressure with respect to what was called Shawinigan at the time. So that was something that seemed to be the right thing to do.
Did he put pressure on you to resign?
Oh, well, we had a private conversation about it.
Which you are happy to make public now?
Well, we had a bit of a disagreement on just the impact that this particular contract should have, and but nevertheless, as I said, the optics were not good.
When Jean Chrétien retired and then Paul Martin came in, it was actually Paul Martin that put you in the Senate, right?
Yes.
Even though you were, I mean, I always thought you were a Chrétien guy.
Well, I've always been loyal to the leader of the party when I was in office.
So Paul Martin put you in the Senate, and
yes.
How does that go? Does he call you up and say, "I got an idea," or how does it happen?
No, he called me up and said, "I think you could still do a lot of good here in Ottawa. What would you like to do?" I said, "I'd like to become a senator. I'd like to continue with the process of public policy development." And about a month or two later, he called me and offered me the Senate.
And let's show a picture of you right now. Here you are in the Red Chamber as the senator from the province of Ontario. Up until that point, though, you had been elected only and over and over and over and over. Any qualms about going into a political job where you didn't have to get elected? Might be a bit removed from the public in that respect.
Well, but I think we do a lot of good in the Senate, have done a lot of good in the Senate, particularly with our studies that we do, because these help to develop public policy. And I've focused on social justice issues, and I've been the chair or the deputy chair over the years of the Social Affairs Committee. We produced reports on things like dementia or obesity, the health accord. We do a lot of healthcare work. We do a lot of work on poverty issues. So that's where I focused my time and attention. And a lot of the recommendations in our reports became government policy. So I consider that to be a very useful thing to do. Plus, of course, our other main responsibility is sober second thought, which is looking at the legislation and making changes to it as we see fit. Now, in the last Parliament, we didn't get an opportunity to do that. Whatever the government of the day, the Harper government wanted, is what they got. They had the majority. But now, with more independent senators, I think the place has never been better. I think it works quite well.
Well, let me pick up on that, because Justin Trudeau, obviously, when he wasn't yet the Prime Minister, when he was leader of the third place party in Parliament, decided that he wanted a different kind of Senate, more like a sort of council of elders in some respects, you know, to offer that kind of advice. And he kicked all of you out of the caucus. He kicked all you Liberal senators out of the caucus on the way to bringing in a different kind of Senate. When he did that, what did you think?
Well, I think it got us by surprise. There wasn't any consultation or advance notice. It just happened all of a sudden. And I think that was very disturbing to a lot of senators. But I didn't stay disturbed long. I got on with the work, because I think actually it's a good idea that we become independent of the national caucus, the caucus of MPs. Because otherwise you get caught up with the group think, and you get caught up with just doing what the party wants to do rather than what is the best thing to do in sober second thought as a senator. So I think it's far better what we have now. And we're not a council of elders. We, in fact, are legislatively equal to the House of Commons, although we bear in mind that they're the elected House, and we should be complementary, not challenging them on everything that they do. But I think it works better the way we're doing it now. We're making some amendments. Sometimes they accept those amendments, sometimes they don't.
Obviously, there's a difference of opinion on whether or not the Senate worked better the previous way, where it was sort of an extension of the government's will of the day.
Oh, but it was just a rubber stamp. That's not useful at all.
You obviously prefer it the way it is now.
Oh, obviously. It's a rubber stamp in terms of legislation. But even then, even in that period of time, we carried on with our studies. And I must say that the studies that went through my committee and most committees were adopted unanimously. They were based on evidence, and they came with recommendations that found their way in many times into government policy. So that part of it has always been good for the Senate. But now I think the sober second thought is much better, too.
And for those people watching this who say, what do we need a Senate for at all anyway? We'd be better off just abolishing the whole thing and saving all the money that it costs to run it. What's the response to that?
Well, I think we need the sober second thought. You know, the House of Commons can make mistakes. They are much more partisan oriented. I think we get to do a dispassionate look at the issues in many cases, and we're able to make recommendations. They do accept a number of our recommendations. And so I think it's very useful in that. And also as we develop studies, and we can do that better than the House of Commons can, but they don't have the time. They're much more in the political sphere of partisan politics. So we get a chance to come up with some good studies and good recommendations which find their way into public policy. So I think for those two reasons it is a useful chamber.
One of the issues that you have really taken up over the years is the notion of what some people call a guaranteed annual income or a basic income. You and progressive conservative Senator Hugh Segal were both really big champions of this. And the Ontario government under Kathleen Wynne brought in a basic income pilot which the subsequent government of Doug Ford has canceled. What's your view on all that?
Well, I thought it was very disappointing because the understanding certainly during the election campaign was that all parties would keep the pilot project going to see what the results of it were, to prove or disprove that basic income is a key part of the answer in terms of our eliminating poverty and dealing with issues of inequality and the changing job market. And I think it still is very valid, and hopefully we will find another province that will come up with a pilot project to help convince people, and in fact that is the way to go. Is
there, do you think, room in the federal government's budget for them, if Ontario has said no, to consider doing its own national pilot program?
Well, they seem to be wanting to be responsive to a province initiating it. It's a program that really takes both province and federal government to be involved with. The federal government should ultimately run a basic income program, but it's going to take provinces to cooperate because they have the social welfare program, the disability programs that are income security for people that are very vulnerable in our community. So it takes both of them. But, you know, Medicare started in a province and then became national. So maybe basic income will start with a province and become national. But it would also be good if the federal government kicked in some money for the pilot project as well. They did that in the 70s in Manitoba, and hopefully they would do it again.
Can I ask you a real smart aleck question here?
Well, you're going to anyway.
I guess you know me. You know, I've heard a lot of nice things about you over the years, but one thing I've never heard people say to describe Art Eggleton is he's an awfully charismatic, dynamic politician. I haven't heard people say that about you. Is that fair comment, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'm very serious about the work I do. I try not to be too serious all the time, of course, but I understand that. I get frequently compared to Bill Davis in terms of being gray in terms of
bland.
Bland, yes, bland. That's the word. But I think there's room for both kinds of politicians in our society.
Well, I do remember when I was a City Hall reporter back in 1982, covering your, I guess it was second City Council as Mayor of Toronto.
Yes.
And there was a newly elected, I think, Ward 6 alderman in that 1982 election named Jack Layton.
Right.
And he used to give it to you good.
Oh,
because
yeah,
he had a lot of pizzazz and you didn't.
He absolutely did. But, you know, I think that's healthy. And, you know, we communicated. One of the things that concerns me about politics today is becoming less civil than what it used to be. It's becoming a little more nasty. But, you know, in those days we could have disagreements, but we could still communicate quite well, and we could still try to listen to each other and try and to find some common ground. That's what I tried to do all the years I was mayor, try to find some common ground with the council. And most of the things I put before the council, I got passed through simply because I worked with the councillors, Jack Layton and everybody else.
We have gone through your history here and shown that you have had a lot of different jobs in public life. And of course, people are probably going to want me to ask you, which was your favorite? So which was it?
Well, I'm asked that occasionally, and I say, well, I've enjoyed doing them all. But I also say there's nothing like being mayor of the city that you were born and raised in and lived in all your life, and I'm very proud of that. I can remember as a child looking up at the mayor and on a podium and just awe, with awe. And then one day I became that mayor.
Who was the mayor you were looking up at in awe?
Oh, I think, let's see, that would go back to people like Hiram McCallum or Lamport.
Alan Lamport.
Yeah.
Now, he got a stadium named after him. What are they going to name after you?
That's right. Oh, they got a park.
I know they got a park named after you.
They named a park. That's good enough.
Yeah.
I haven't been asked to go out and mow the lawn yet, so I'm grateful for that.
You know, I know how much that means to you because when they had a farewell party for you in Midtown Toronto a couple of weeks ago, you gave a speech in which you talked about how important it was to be the mayor of the city. And I guess I can tell tales out of school here. It was a private party, but still, you teared up a lot there. You got very choked up about that.
Well,
how come?
Well, I love this city, and I've been here all my life. I've seen it change quite a bit, and I like to think I've made a contribution to its betterment. There still are issues that I'm concerned about, and I'm still going to be involved in. I'm concerned about affordable housing and transportation, as many other people are. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I keep a close eye on what's happening at the City Council. And of course, the mayor had me do a project a couple of years ago on Toronto community housing. So you can take Art Eggleton out of Toronto, but you can't take Toronto out of Art Eggleton.
So we've probably not heard the last of you, is what you're saying.
Oh, well, yes, but I'm not running for elected office anymore, I can tell you that.
Gotcha. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Steve.
That's Art Eggleton, former mayor, former cabinet minister, former senator, now just Citizen Eggleton. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.